So today, I'll start off by just explaining what I do in the Department of Defense. I'm part of the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and I am with the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Logistics. My role now is to coordinate all of the audit issues that are facing the logistics branch of the Department of Defense. This entails a lot of just learning all of the lingo, working with a bunch of different communities. Sometimes it's acquisition related, but it flows into logistics. Sometimes it's a logistics related issue that flows into finance. Sometimes it's all the different groups mixed together. So it's a lot of planning, a lot of organization, and a lot of working with all of the different pieces of the department to try to get to resolutions and more improved business processes. So how does this tie into our restructuring our assets? Well, for me, it is enterprise risk management. We are trying to develop a way to take all of our issues, whether it's an audit-related issue that has been independently verified, or an inspector general issue, a GAO issue, maybe it's a critical operations kind of issue. But we need to be able to take all of these different aspects of our business, look at them holistically, and then try to balance our resources against the criticality of what's going on. That is not easy, but we're beginning that journey. So how are we going about this? The first thing that we're doing is assembling as many experts as we can possibly assemble. We need all the different backgrounds to participate, and each of them brings not only the skill set, but just their knowledge about the intricacies of all the different things that they manage. And, assets is just one of those critical things that flows through everything, be it people with their resources, people with their knowledge, be it things, it all ties together. So we start with our people and our people resources to bring them together and look at what are the major issues that we're facing right now. COVID is one of those major issues that we're facing right now. We need to understand what testing equipment we have, where it is. We need to understand who has access to it. Is it being utilized? Can it be utilized? And that's one of those issues that we're really trying to address through just a holistic look at the department. Along with that, we're looking at other goals like establishing our financial reporting requirements. That's not as vitally important as addressing COVID due to just how the far-reaching impacts, but in its own way, we have that very high level of importance, and we need to be able to address this. So how do you balance your resources, your money, your people, with a critical issue like dealing with COVID and other really important issues like, managing your assets appropriately, improving your business operations, and building the trust that we are doing the best possible job that we can do with what we have. It's a big challenge. Thankfully, there are tools out there, software-based tools. We're starting to pilot different software-based enterprise risk management tools to look at the pros and cons and how we can marry our issues with our work and our resourcing. So we're trying to strategically plan how we're going to get our arms around all these sorts of things. One of the best features that I've seen has been the risk profile. You can build a risk profile around an issue, and you can build that profile using many different aspects. You can use manpower required. You can use operational impacts. You can use cost. How costly would it be to fix this problem? And those are just some of the different aspects that you can use to try to build a risk profile on the issues that you're trying to work. In conjunction with the risk profile, we're also looking at how do the different issues fit together. Is there a big problem that will take care of several little problems? What are the root causes? So the root causes are another aspect that we're really trying to drive toward. People can identify symptoms really easily. It's figuring out what's actually causing the symptoms. So that's another aspect of the enterprise risk management approach that we're trying to apply in the DoD. It's going to take a lot of effort. We're working in conjunction with the military services. Each of the services are trying to do their own ERM applications. So they're looking internally to just their issues. At my level, we're taking both the work that they're doing for their internal issues and putting it together in a global picture. So we're looking department-wide. Sometimes there's a particular item that impacts multiple services or the other components. And from our seat, that's where we can influence how the resourcing gets applied, how to prioritize what's going to get fixed, what gets the attention. And a lot of it is top cover too. Sometimes having that leadership position that shows, okay, we've seen all these different aspects based on our data available. We're recommending you prioritize issues 1, 2, and 3. Then when other elements of the department come and ask why issues 4, 5, and 6 are slow in being fixed, we provide the top cover to say, based on our criticality, based on our risk profile, we're working on 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be in the next wave. So all of that put together is just an overview of how we are looking at using our resources more effectively, trying to address all of the issues around our assets, our asset management, and looking at it as an enterprise instead of issue by issue. Were there any questions, Bob?
Why, thank you. That was I do have a question, and it's particularly around standards. And I know that we've looked at, there's some standards around risk management, and standards are important as you're looking at this. I'm familiar with a standard that was put out by the ASTM having to do with risk management. And my question really is, at what level are you looking at standards and bringing standards into the process of going through and deciding how you're going to apply risk management policies and strategies?
That's a great question. We are very early in trying to implement the ERM as a department. So standards right now are very critical to me because it gives me a framework that I can use to make sure that I'm not missing a aspect that's a common knowledge based on the standards. So it's really helping to inform how I can help address ERM as the department.
And then just a follow-up question on that. Is the DoD, or let me, there's not is, but how is the DoD looking at the asset management standard, the ISO 55000 standard, and integrating that into what you're doing and across the department in general, if you have that information?
Well, right now, the ISO 55000 is helping to build the framework. We're not at a point where we might consider pursuing certification against the 55,000 standards, but it's a healthy framework to use to make sure that as we're addressing all of the different ERM aspects, that it brings in the other elements that we may not have immediately considered.
Very good. Yeah, standards are an exciting opportunity, I think, for a lot of people in asset management, as it is now getting towards a tipping point. So, is there any possibility of requiring SAMPs from contractors, or strategic asset management plans, as they're known, from contractors?
That's too far down the road for me to predict, and it's definitely a different branch. I don't have a lot to say in what goes into the requirements that go out to contractors.
Nick, as producer, are there any questions that are coming up?
Yeah, Marty Rowland has asked, 2 decades ago, resource managers talked about bandwidth management to describe the task of setting individual boundaries for multiple factors so that they together produce an outcome that is desired. Is this a good way to describe what you're doing, Amber?
In a way, we're trying to apply prioritization within the constraints of what we have. So it sounds very similar to bandwidth management.
Great. And there was one other question from Cecilia Mowat. Appreciate your strategic approach, Amber. What tools of communication are you using to make the process transparent and set the expectations? In looking at 55,001 5.3 for involving all stakeholders, how are you identifying stakeholders?
Well, first, we're bringing in all of the action officer level people from all of the different components throughout the department. So we have representation from both each component, and within each component, we're looking for representatives from logistics, from contracting, from finance, from program management, systems. So that way, as we build our risk register and our profiles, we have input from all the vested bodies within each component, and each component has their own representation.
Awesome. Well, that's that's all the questions I see in the Q&A currently.
Any other panelists have a question that they want to raise? Well, Amber, let me ask this question then. I know that risk management has been a strategic initiative in many commercial organizations, and they put a lot of effort into managing their risk across the organization. And I'm wondering, what are the similarities, and more importantly, maybe, what are the differences in how DoD is going to look at risk management versus what they're doing in the commercial world?
Thanks. That can be a challenging question, Bob. Yeah, part of it is the constraints that a government agency has that a commercial agency does not have. When we look at our budgets, if we haven't structured our budget in a way that supports the risk management profile, then we have to go back to Congress, or we have to go to the comptroller to get reprogramming done to make sure that we've applied funding where we need to apply the funding. Sometimes there's chain of command issues. You get into the lower levels of the components, and everything's going fine, they get to their leadership, and their leadership doesn't see the picture the same way that everybody else sees the picture. There's a new roadblock, and I don't know that there's a huge correlation with the commercial side of things, but I know in the DoD especially, you get to the military side of things, and they get some hackles raised pretty easily sometimes. So I think that those would be a couple of examples where we would have different challenges in approaching enterprise risk management compared to commercial side.
Okay, I have a question or chat that just came in, and this is from Boyd Beal. It says, I believe we need to put risk in its proper perspective with respect to value to the organization and cost. Some risks are worth taking, and this should be applied to all projects. Do you agree?
Oh, yes. Well, that's part of what we're trying to do. We need to understand better about why something is a critical issue so that we can accept risk where risk needs to be accepted. If we don't understand why an issue is a critical issue, then we may not accept the risk, whereas had we had a better understanding of what that issue was, then we would have accepted the risk and continued to work towards a resolution.
Yes, good. I mean, that leads to the next question. Is you're looking at that and you're looking at the risk, and is there coordinations about the different aspects of personal property? I mean, you've got personal property, you've got IT assets, you've got facilities. Is there coordination, and how do the risks differ between those different types of subgroups of assets? And then how do you try to bring that together into a consolidated risk management approach?
Right, that's a tricky wicket. Each of the asset types have just a little bit of a different need, and then we also have to balance that with things like our administration. They have different focus areas that they want to target, and the focus areas that they want to target may leave other assets in the wake for a little while. There's also nothing like a good crisis. You get to a point where the like IT assets. Remember a few years back where we had some computers that had been stolen, and then all of a sudden there was an IT focus over IT assets for several years, and new controls were put in place. Whereas had the person actually just took care of their laptop appropriately and not left it in the car, the reaction meter went way off the deep end. Conversely, when we're talking about servers being hacked, that is a different IT issue with a completely different risk profile. So, all of these have to be weighed together so that we can look at the department as a whole. It's a challenge. It is a very big challenge, but we're trying the best we can.
It is a big challenge, and what your statement reminded me of something I heard. We had a president of the NPMA who I plugged earlier, named Mike Hay, and he was a director of risk management for the state of Texas. And his byline essentially was, asset management is no big deal until it's a big deal, and then it's a really big deal. So So risk management is been part and parcel of personal property management and asset management since really its inception. And I'm very interested in how you've presented it. Thank you for enlightening us, and I'm sure there is a lot more coming forward. Do you have contact information you'd like to share with anybody that's on this webinar in the event that they would like to contact you and ask you a direct question?
Sure, I will type it into the chat box.
Perfect. Thank you. If does anybody else have any more questions for Amber? We're at the end of the time frame that we originally planned on. So Amber, thank you very much. It was a very, very interesting conversation, and I wish you best of luck as you get your arms around this incredibly large project and program that you're working.
Thank you.